The first form that we learned was vertex form. It looks like this. Y equals A times x minus h squared plus k. When we graph a parabola that has been given to us in vertex form, your first step is to identify the vertex. The vertex is HK, and the one thing to note is that H is opposite. I need to make sure that doesn't say his. H is opposite. So when you look at the vertex form, you can immediately see the vertex and get that on the graph. The other thing that you immediately see is the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is the same as the first part of the vertex. It goes through the vertex. So put your vertex on the graph, draw your axis of symmetry through your vertex. Then you need another point. This is the hardest part of vertex form, remembering how to get another point. Because if you get one more point, you just reflect that point over the symmetry line. So you just need one more point that isn't on the symmetry line. To get that point, you need to pick an x value close to the axis of symmetry. That's the x value of your point. Plug it in, and that will give you the y value of that point. So if your symmetry line is at 2, pick 3 or 4, and plug that number in and get 4 comma whatever. If your symmetry line is -5, pick something like -3, plug that in and get -3 comma whatever. So pick an x value close to your symmetry line, plug that in, that gives you another point, then reflect that point over your symmetry line. That gives you the 3 points you need, and then you can graph your parabola. The second form that we looked at was standard form. It is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. This form probably requires the most amount of mathematical work, but once you get into the swing of it, it's really not that difficult. The first thing that you should come up with is your axis of symmetry. I tried to say this formula over and over and over. I'm wondering if anybody remembered what it was. Does anybody remember? X equals opposite of b over 2a. Some people remember it. Yay. So opposite of b over 2a. Remember, if your b value is positive, you'd use negative. If your b value is negative, you'd use positive. So make sure you use the opposite of your b value. Once you know where your axis of symmetry is, you know part of your vertex. Your axis of symmetry is the same as the first part of your vertex. So the first part is opposite of b over 2a. To get the corresponding y value, you would plug that number in to get the rest of your vertex. So you have to do quite a bit of math. You have to figure out the axis of symmetry. You have to plug that number in to get the rest of your vertex. The third part of standard form is the super easy part. Your y-intercept is c. So this c value in your equation, that is the same as your y-intercept. So you can plot that point on your y-axis and then reflect it over your symmetry line. And last but not least, my favorite form, intercept form, is y equals a times x minus p times x minus q. Your first step is to identify your x-intercepts. Your x-intercepts are P and Q. And I'm going to put a note in here about opposite. So if it says x minus 2, your intercept would be at positive 2. If it says x plus 5, your intercept would be at negative 5. So whatever you see in the parentheses, take the opposite of that, and that is your x-intercept. So by putting your x-intercepts on the graph, you already have 2 points, and those 2 points are symmetrical. So your axis of symmetry is halfway between P and Q. So put one finger on one intercept, one finger on the other intercept, count in until your fingers meet. Find that halfway point directly in between P and Q. That axis of symmetry gives you the first part of your vertex. So once you figure out what that axis of symmetry is, plug that number in. That gives you the rest of the vertex. I love intercept form because I get 2 points and my axis of symmetry. The only math we really have to do is plugging in that symmetry value to get the rest of your vertex. It just seems like less work to me. Unfortunately, you can't pick which form you are given. You'll be given one of these 3 forms and you'll have to deal with it. And tomorrow we're going to start getting into word problems where they are using one of these forms. And if you know how to find your vertex from each form, you're fine. Quadratic word problems are actually really, really ridiculously easy if you know how to find your vertex. If you don't know how to find your vertex, it's going to be challenging. So today I want you to practice using these 3 forms and feel like you're good at this process. The other thing that I'm going to put on here, but I also have it on the board, the term roots, zeros, x-intercepts, and solutions. Those 4 terms are used interchangeably. They all mean the same thing. They all mean where the parabola crosses or touches the x-axis. So on your assignment today, it's going to ask how many roots? How many roots, or the number of roots? It's asking you how many times does the parabola touch or cross the x-axis. So how many times then it will ask you, what are the zeros? Zeros, roots, x-intercepts, those all mean the same thing. So first it's saying, how many times does this parabola touch or cross the x-intercept? Then it's asking, okay, where does it cross the x-axis? So where does it touch or cross the x-axis? So give me the actual x value. Like if it crosses the x-axis at the point 2, 0, it has a 0 at 2.